phone in. I'm Matty, and it's been a typically quiet week in the world of Hibernian Football Club. A very, very convincing 3-0 win through in Paisley on Saturday, followed up by the bombshell news that VAR got it wrong again. No, they didn't really. No, the news
I
that
thought you weren't going to mention VAR.
no, I know. I just was trying to think of something different to say than the Black Knights have sold the shares. But the news came out today that Biden, who are the Gordon family, have bought back the shares that Black Knights held. Um, Foley and Bezpachenko and the other guy whose name escapes me off the top of my head right now exit the board. Dan Barnett goes onto the board, and Hibs are fully owned more or less by Biden, by a few minority shareholders. So, well, Ian, sorry, Joe, you were first on. Where do you want to start with this week's
St Mirren
episode?
game. St Mirren game. I mean, the highlights of St Mirren game was obviously the DJ playing, stopping "Dancing in the Dark." And once they realised it was the Josh Campbell song, so we all started singing. Then the DJ stopped it, and then obviously the final highlight was Josh Campbell's fantastic shot, leaving the fluorescent tube hanging down over my head from the stand roof. That was really exciting.
Did that make it look
It
like you
looked
just
like
had an idea, Ian?
what?
Like
An
having a big
idea?
bulb above your head?
All right, I was. It was a funny shape for one of these light bulbs, but hopefully, the coaching team have now learned their lesson that Josh Mulligan shouldn't be playing again at wing back ever in the world.
Mm.
We came alive with him in midfield, and it made Dan Barlasser much more effective, and it was great to see Josh unleashed pretty much on Saturday. And even if St Mirren had tried to close down Barlasser like Rangers and Livingston did, playing Mulligan actually mitigated that threat because he was always available. Balasser initially didn't drop back to get the ball from Salinger, but as soon as he did, he gave us so many more options to play with. I felt it was a much closer game than the score would suggest, but the difference was our finishing, which has obviously been very poor in domestic competitions. I mean, we had 15 shots, 5 on target, but it's actually the best finishing of our season. With I worked it out today, with 60% of our on-target shots resulting in goals. So the next highest was in the Midtjylland and Partizan games, but domestically it was 33% against Livingston, where 33% of our on-target shots actually resulted in goals, and 20% of all our shots resulted in goals. So basically, 60% of our on-target shots resulted in goals, and that's the highest we've been at finishing all season. So we
There is
were.
there is an irony there, Ian, in that two of the goals were deflected in
I know,
as well.
but they were hit really hard.
They
They
were.
were actually hit hard, and they were on target.
Yep.
Right? They were definitely on target. So, I mean, we were obviously fortunate that two of the top performers from St Mirren this season, and for a while actually, O'Hara and Gogic weren't playing because Gogic always enjoys playing against us, but they still looked very dangerous, and I think it was only our continuous pressure. We didn't make the mistake of trying to defend our lead.
Hmm.
We just kept on attacking. So the subs were, and that kept St Mirren down. The subs came on. They actually strengthened our attack, and we actually started playing even more fluently with more movement off the ball when the subs came on. And it is easy to forget how smart a player Josh Campbell is, but it made a huge difference when he came on to the options that we had. So almost everybody had a good game, which is how it should be against what should be a lesser team like St Mirren. But
Hmm.
as well as Mulligan, but for me, Salinger and Hanley really stood out. And I think Rocky is going to learn even more now he's playing beside Grant Hanley. I underestimated Grant Hanley, and he's really been terrific recently. My only concern is that in the second half, Grant Hanley missed a header at the back post, putting it wide. And I think Rocky would probably have hit the target. So we definitely need Rocky or Hanley to reintroduce, if you like, the threat at the corners. But obviously, the downside was the hellish disruption of the minute silence. Some arsehole shouting about bloody Sunday deaths, and then who are we? We're Hibs. So it was a real downer right at the start of the game. And thank God they didn't actually have that on Sports Scene highlights. But it was great. It was great. It was a good result. It was very enjoyable, and it was great to see us really begin to look fluid again.
I think it's right to highlight the minute's silence, but I think it's also right to point out it was well observed by the vast majority of the Hibs support. I always think like everybody gets labelled with it, don't they? Like everybody, the Hibs fans disrupted it, and it was most of them observed it.
I know, but the problem is that we ended up booing the people who were actually shouting, and it sounded like we were booing. That's the trouble. That's what it sounded like anyway.
Alternative Hibs has asked on YouTube, what's Stevie B having for his tea?
A bit of a late one, due to a haircut and 2 kids. It's actually the Food Warehouse kebab meat, which apparently is restaurant quality, and it's ready in 6 minutes in the air fryer.
Decent.
And an over toasted.
Disappointed it's not a Farley's rusk.
And an over toasted pita bread and undercooked chips. So marks it at 15, probably in the minus, to be honest.
Decent. Okay, do we have any more chat on Saturday's game? So I can look at the comments that we've got on YouTube, and it looks like the sort of the pressing issue is the news today. But I then want to take away for the chat on the game on Saturday, because it's not often we go away and win 3-0. So you'd like to see the players getting a bit of the limelight and everything. So anybody else, John? You get your hand up.
I think sticking away from VAR, I think he's covered it well, that comms round about VAR needs to improve dramatically to try and sort out so the fans aren't guessing. They even had the pundits guessing as to what was going on. So comms need to get sorted out there. For us, it was a game where it showed the difference in scoring goals. First half hour of the game, it wasn't that much difference between the sides. We got the goal to go ahead, put St Mirren on the back foot. Start of the second half, they start well, but again, their goals rightly chopped off for offside. We go up the pitch, a Cadden to Cadden ball. I'm not convinced Bowie got a touch, but if he did, credit him. And you take the deflection, and that's the margins. I mean, we've been going all this season about how we're not doing well enough. It's actually that idea that there's 2 teams on the pitch trying to compete to win. And what we saw in the last half hour of that game was that when you're 2-0 up and the other team confidence is dropped, your confidence is lifted, and your good players can be good players, that's what you remember. So I think it's those are the sort of games that you want more of. And that's why we're always saying, take the chances at the beginning, put the other team under pressure, stay tight at the back, and you have a little bit of luck. I mean, I think it's 3-0. I think overstated it from certainly what I saw in the Premier Sports, but sometimes you take it.
Who stood out for you, John?
I couldn't see past Mulligan. Again, it's that we've had the discussions about right wing back in midfield. The energy seemed to be there all over the park, and whenever Barlasser was in trouble, he seemed to be around about him. It didn't seem that him and McGrath were isolated at the other end of the pitch as they seemed to be at Livingston. No, who was it? Who was the 2 in Livingston? Can't remember. Was it Chaiwa? It was Chaiwa and McGrath were too high up the pitch, isolated from Barlasser, and there was just nothing there. It seemed that 3 were much closer together. St Mirren weren't offering anything in the middle of the pitch. The 2 big laddies up front are absolute units. You know what I mean? And credit to Hanley and Rocky, who predominantly dealt with them. You saw Rocky getting pushed back 5 yards in the second half, where the guy just opened it up for a space, and you're thinking, if you're doing that to Rocky, you've got a bit about you. But no, Mulligan was the one for me in terms of that drive forward. But everybody, Nicky Cadden was closer to the player that we saw last season. Good to see his brother, his twin on the other side. Salinger is turning out to be that steady 7, 8 out of 10 goalie that you're looking for, in terms of he's saving the stuff that you'd expect him to save, catching balls at the back post. Difficult to pick out anybody that did anything wrong, and clearly 32 came on at the end.
Yeah, there's a really good article in the Observer about Salinger, about his his stats, etc., and just really demonstrating the value that he's added to the team since he's come in.
He must be doing well because the SPFL put that wee video clips together of him. So maybe that's why when we see him doing the saves, he's deliberately doing them for the cameras. I mean, so that he knows that they're going to pick it up and he'll get that wee montage done.
Keeper should do that. I always think that should be like a prerequisite for a keeper. You don't want boring saves, eh? Like, he has to look a bit spectacular. That's the whole point of being a goalie. Leon, you get your hand up?
I just continue on about the game. St Mirren. We're talking about like Mulligan in midfield, and obviously everybody wants to see him, but the biggest part of that was obviously Cadden putting in a good enough performance that we're not having to worry about taking him off at half time or anything like that. And I like Chris Cadden. He's obviously fell away a wee bit. His form's dropped, which I think he's one of these players that have maybe overlooked cover for him because they've been expecting a certain level from him. So when his levels have dropped, Mulligan's been the answer they've had to tuck in there. So as long as he keeps performing, Mulligan will be in the centre of midfield, and that's looking like what's his best position. But I never had any issues with him going out there at times because you want your strongest available players. I wouldn't sacrifice somebody that's no good enough to start at right wing back, to get Mulligan in the midfield. If we can obviously have someone that's good enough in midfield to cover for Mulligan at right wing back, do you know what I mean? But I thought they were great. The manager, like everyone, selection was brilliant. Put Boyle back in. I mean, again, there's obviously people questioning starting 11s, but I thought Boyle's like the intelligence he was running. I mean, I like Cleege, very explosive and offers a lot of threat and stuff, but there's no coincidence that a lot of the goals came from other areas when Martin Boyle's on the park as well, and Bowie, the Bayfirm worked the backline so well and opened up so much space. But I thought overall it's one of the performances that if you look at it, you'd be like, maybe flattered you, but I think when you look back at the chances we did create, it never really.
Aye, I'd agree with that. Joe, what were your thoughts on Saturday?
Well, first of all, can I congratulate Ian on a very thorough summary? He's really said it all for us. Well done, Ian. Nothing much to add to that, really, other than agreeing with everyone. Mulligan must start in midfield if at all possible. But I did say after the Livingston game, keep the faith. And
you did.
It's largely the same team, but this team just needs a bit more time to play together. I think we've got the semblance of a team that could end up third or second quite easily.
Good stuff. Jeff, you get a hand up?
Yeah. Sorry, mate. Caught me by surprise. I'm just disappointed but not disappointed that Mulligan didn't make the Scotland squad as one of the replacements. I thought he would be a shoo-in after his performances. Gives you cover at right back and in midfield, and they called in Irvin and Conor Barron. If he played in blue or hoops, he'd be in the squad. That's my opinion. But like John McGinn was late getting called to the Scotland squad because he was really frustrating. Well, I'm glad in a way he's not, because he can concentrate on Hibs, but he deserves a spot at the moment ahead of the other two.
Did you have any other thoughts on the game, Jeff?
I was there. It was. I think all the others have encapsulated basically what went on. I was so happy to see Chris Cadden score. He's such a nice guy. He's clearly well liked by everybody, and it meant so much to him. That was a wee highlight. Everyone screamed when Josh Campbell got the ball and he passed it back to Chaiwa. You could hear the audible "What the fuck!" And next minute it's bouncing in the roof of the net. I was happy for Campbell and for Chaiwa. I put a message out in our group early before the game saying I was deflated by the selection. Didn't think it was a bad one, but I wanted to see Chaiwa in midfield. I'm quite excited by him. When he wasn't there, I wasn't so bothered about Cleege and Boyle, but Chaiwa was really disappointing. But yep, all the midfielders were brilliant. Barlaser was outstanding as well. No passengers on Saturday. Great away support. Really good vocal. Just good. Good not to hear the Hibs are falling apart again. Just one of them, because they played the song before the game.
Of course they did.
DJ, yeah. Twat.
Hi. Okay, thanks, Jeff. Chris, you want to cover Saturday at all?
To be fair, I only watched the highlights because I was down at the Stadium of Light on Saturday.
Of course you were, yeah. How was that?
It was drunken, to be fair.
Good.
Very, very drunken, but it was good. It was a good night.
Okay,
So,
right.
yeah.
Well, we'll come back. We'll come back to you when we start talking about the next bit. Stephen, you'll see the game and take it. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I've seen the majority of it. I think probably the thing I would use to sum it up is a good recovery after the disappointment of the early goal, which obviously was chopped off ultimately. In the past we could have crumbled from that, but I actually thought once we got a stranglehold of the game, we were the better team, and yeah, it was certainly a thoroughly deserved win. And for me, it's brilliant for Salinger to get a clean sheet. So yeah, Ian, Leon, Joe, everyone else has pretty much covered what I would have probably picked up on as well. So yeah, just a great win. Even Robinson after the game, who usually says St Mirren dominated, I think he said that after every game we've set Easter Road. Even he said Hibs were the better team and deserved to win. So if he's admitting that, then it must be true.
Okay, right. Let's go get some comments for YouTube, and then we'll tackle this Black Knights situation, because this is dominating the comments. So Rob said, "Evening all, do you think it fell through because Bournemouth had their eye on one or two of our players?" And Davy Gray said, "No." J-Star said, "Hi all, can't make my mind up how I feel about Black Knights situation, if it's a good or a bad thing going forward." Kieran said, "Off topic, Matty, but has there been any developments or info passed out about the indoor training facility East Main's being built?" Kieran, nothing that I've heard other than that it was all sort of at the planning permission stage and good to go. So I would presume that's still happening. Michael said, "I think we will struggle for future investors now that the Black Knights have left the building for not getting a say on how the club is run. It's the Gordon's way or the highway." Green Tea said, "I'm quite happy that BKs are away. Seemed they wanted to tell us what system to play, who to have as CEO and manager, as well as being a feeder club to Bournemouth, all for 25%. E2 Linux said, "Hopefully it was, but wonder if the decision had already been or came after the poor behaviour during the remembrance silence." And J Star said, "As long as the Gordons don't sell to Rangers or Celtic, it's all good." And Alternative Hib says, "BK away last year and BK away this year. We basically can't sign anyone with initials BK in the January window." And Michael Keith said, "I have been one of Gray's biggest critics over the last few weeks. However, you got the setup bang on and made the correct in-game changes that were needed on Saturday. So well done. Time to push on now." So, right, Chris, I said I would come to you first on this one. Where do you stand on the news today?
To be honest, I'm quite happy. I think initially when the Black Knights came in, I wasn't overly convinced. I wasn't convinced where a role would be within the Black Knights group, and doing a bit of looking into it, and I've done it again today. When you look at the shareholdings I had in Lorient, Lorient's been a basket case, pretty much. They got relegated, sacked the manager, sold their best players whilst they were in a relegation battle. And yes, they won the League Two last year, but again, they sold their best player for a fraction of the price of what he's worth to Bournemouth. So I've never ever been convinced by the merits of the Black Knights tie-in investment, whatever you want to call it. And even when you look at what we've got, like what we got out of the Black Knights, just on face values, we got a Owen Bevan twice, who was injured twice and lasted probably 2 days at HTC. A Marcondes who had just came off the treatment table for it was about a year out and came to Hibs to basically gain fitness to move on.
Mm-hmm.
And Nathan Mariah Welsh, who was, let's be honest, a squad player and a massive downgrade in the quality we have in midfield at the moment. So the actual benefits of what we got out of that hasn't been massive. And if we look at the financials, it's been the Gordons that have then put the money in to cover the losses for the Mizians or the Marcondeses and that, who came in and cost us more money than we were budgeting for. So ultimately, what we've done is we've got a couple of players fit for them, and that's really been it. And we've got £6 million that nobody really knows what happened to it, that they've essentially got back. So I'm not overly fussed that they've moved on. I don't think you can have a minority shareholder who comes in and dictates how the club is run. He can't come in and sit and go, "Well, I'm going to sack your director of football, your manager, your coaches, and we put these people on the board. You will play this way, you will do this. We will send you players you'll develop them, and from what I look at it is, we'll buy them off you for a fraction of the price, and we'll just kind of keep the money in house. For me, that's not what we should be about. I know in the grand scheme of football, we're not a big club.
Mm-hmm.
What we are in Scottish football, and we have heritage and a lot more history than a team like Bournemouth. We should never ever be a feeder club to teams like that.
What are the arguments I've seen that they've put forward about the feeder club thing? Because obviously it brings a like an emotive phrase, isn't it? Like it has connotations to folk hear it, but I always think Hibs essentially are a feeder club. We're just a feeder club to lots of different clubs. Like we are a club that will buy, develop a player, and then sell on. And I always thought the benefit, or one of the benefits of being part of the group, was that you had some support and buying the players in to develop, which we don't have at the moment. You know, like we're relying on our in-house team spotting them and developing them. Do you think, Chris, that there was, you listed like the sort of the benefits, or and not real benefits, the way that you positioned them. Do you think had there been more cooperation, there might have been we might look back on it differently?
I think it'll just really depend on what they were expecting. Like, the only people that have said that we haven't been cooperating was Bill Foley when it was all falling apart over a year ago, after I was at the Kelty game.
Mm-hmm.
Like when he said we weren't listening, we weren't doing this. Like, but Foley's been decidedly quiet when we've been on a historical unbeaten run. Never said a word. There's obviously relative success there, so
yep.
we've either listened to him and cooperated, and he's just wanted to do more, or we've done it our own way and we've been successful, and then the Gordons are turning and goes, well, we're doing all right. We're doing all right now. Like, our recruitment's a million miles ahead of where it was 2 seasons ago.
Mm-hmm.
We've obviously put football people in the right places, whether Foley wanted to do people or not. We've put them in the right places and they're obviously working. So I don't know how much cooperation there was, if I'm being brutally honest. Especially when Foley's turned around and said, well, we didn't want any people. They're not listening to us. So I'm not sure we needed that much. We've maybe needed the elbow in the right direction, but I think maybe Ian Gordon's recognised that himself, took himself at the firing line, brought in Mackay, put him into the firing line initially, but it's then snowballed into something that looks fairly cohesive. And I'm not sure it's been anything through the Black Knights.
Okay, who else wants to come in?
We'll come in if you want.
Yeah, go for Ian.
Overall, I was very, very disappointed. At the moment, we're celebrating beating St Mirren, where our standards should be a lot higher. We enjoyed the European ties at the beginning of the season, but we failed. And we didn't fail by much, but we failed. And it was really disappointing because it was really buggered up what was a brilliant start to the season. And we've stumbled ever since then. So we should be a lot better than we are. And anything that makes us a lot better, potentially, we should not push out the way. And I think it really shows the lack of appreciation by our board of an alternative business model. And worst of all, a lack of ability to be open to major change. So as you just quoted Michael Keith there in the comments, my thoughts were the same as his, that we'll struggle to get other investment as a result of probably our perceived lack of ability to work, if you like, collaboratively at a strategic level, because that's what Black Knight were, strategic. So as Chris said, I would rather we weren't a feeder club for Bournemouth as well, but I prefer to be a feeder club to Bournemouth than the old firm, and especially Celtic. So I thought the Bournemouth link would have attracted and helped us retain players because they would see a pathway. For instance, Lewis Miller, if Lewis Miller had actually seen the potential move to Bournemouth, if they regarded him as being good enough. But big ideas at the start, like lowering the pitch to make the stadium bigger, these will now be lost. These ideas will be lost. And I thought that mentoring is always a key to any sort of management culture, mentoring. And we would have benefited all of the club by, I think Bournemouth are a terrific team and that club. I really thought it would give us a chance to lift our level and compete with the likes of the Old Firm. But I feel this decision and the rejection of what appears to be an increasingly popular business model. So I listened to the same podcast that you did, but by Bizchenko or whatever his name is, and an increasingly popular business model in sport, not just football. But I feel that consigns us, that decision consigns us to being followers rather than leaders. So I'm very disappointed.
How do you think, Ian, that we get to the point where there's such a disparity in what the two parties think is going on?
I think it's inexperience at our board level. When I was Ian Gordon's age, I probably made daft mistakes, and I think, I mean, if you get yourself in a position where you're at an impasse, then you end up closing down the government. You know, I mean, that's what happens if you can't collaborate with people. If you find yourself entrenched and saying we're not going to do that, you can't come out and say we're not going to do that. You have to be able to say, right, well, we'll think about that. Well, this is where it fits into our strategy. You know, you can't just go head to head with people and get to an impasse, which I think is what's happened.
Okay, right. Leon, Jeff, Stephen, John, you've got your hands up. So Leon, you were first up, so I'll come to you next.
I was looking forward to seeing how it progressed when it first started, Black Night thing. But I don't know. So it's a hard way to. I think it was definitely obviously a difference in ideas to what they were going to do. When they first came in, they maybe discussed this is what we were looking at doing, this is what Hibs are looking at doing, and they've probably been like, right, why do you not come in? We'll get involved, we'll chat, we'll work together and see what we can do. They've got to a stage where they're not agreeing on a lot of things. Bill Foley obviously had his moment where he publicly attacked the club for the appointment of David Gray and Malcolm Mackay, which now looks stupid on his behalf because it's actually worked really well. The fact that he came out and acted like that right away was a massive red flag for me, because I was like, is this guy a dictator, or is this guy someone who's wanting to work within a group and keep things at board level? The fact that he came out and said it in public right away, ever since that moment, I had my reservations about the whole situation, because I didn't see anything like that. I get people can come back on each other and apologise and say, like, I was maybe. I mean, he's not saying that. There's no way he's apologising for the way he acts. He's a billionaire. He's a leader of massive financial companies, for sports companies. There's no way he would ever look at himself in the mirror and be like, I've done the wrong thing, because these people didn't work like that, in my opinion. So I think the way I'm glad it's over now. I'm glad it's been dealt with. I'm all for strategy and stuff like that, but I think there could be a lot of talking and no action. And I think what was maybe happening was there was a lot of talking because we seen nothing. They gave us Marcondes because his contract was about to run out, just as a wee make weight in the deal. We were on good terms with them in that window, apparently, just starting. And the summer came, that we got rid of the manager. We were on good terms with them. We had the boy Bevan signed, then that fell through due to injury, apparently, and stuff like that. But for day dot, it's all been talk, it's all been ideas, and I've not seen anything looking at it and be like, aye, that's great, it's great, that's done well, Black Knight's done well, blah blah blah. Darvan Stewart's obviously moved from Bournemouth to Easter Road, but that could have happened. He could have been for Blackburn, could have been for Norwich. Now, obviously, it's happened because we've obviously been working alongside them, and he's moved up here. But if he was good enough to stay at Bournemouth, he would still be at Bournemouth. I don't know. Nobody's telling me that we are handpicking Premier League recruitment at the top level, and they're going to weaken their sale to help Hibs out, because that was never what the structure was about anyway. So it's obviously just been like two companies that work close together. He's looking for a move. He's maybe looking to go up the way in his CV, because obviously what he done as a job at Bournemouth, he'll be probably leading it here. Do you know what I mean? Rather than working under people. So I didn't believe that was like also I didn't believe that was like Bournemouth doing us a massive favour. It was just working together alongside each other. I don't know where we go with this, but it's quite interesting that Ian Gordon's bought the shares and there's not been any other investors coming in and taking the shares. But for me, he's talked about the long-term ambitions of looking after the club. So I don't see that he would leave anywhere. But I'd also say that the fact that he now owns 85%, maybe, that if the Gordons want to move on and sell the club as a whole, it's in a far better position to do it. Because I don't know what situation you'd be in with a Bournemouth involved and a Black Knights involved if you want to sell the club. I don't know how that would work.
One of the things, Leon, that the Gordon family said when they brought the Black Knights on was that it was always part of Ron's vision to have a partner helping out. So do you think this is it? They've tried it; it's not going to work, or do you think they'll be seeking out somebody else to come in instead?
I think there'll always be opportunities for that kind of thing in this, and I think that the landscape of Scottish football and the way it's looking now is, unless they're willing to stump up a lot of money, doing it alone's going to be really difficult. I think that was Ron talked about it. It was talked about when Black Knights came in. Ron's ideas and visions of being involved across board with other areas and other clubs and other people. So and getting help essentially. So I don't think that's a closed door on it. I just think genuinely it's came down to a moment, impasse that they've both agreed. Do you know what? This isn't working for us on both sides. You want to do it this way. We want to go that way. Let's just call it a day. We'll obviously dramatise it and make it exciting and scary, and if it's football, so everything's overly everything's crazy, whereas it could literally be very straightforward discussion that's been had. Obviously, the flood forwards and stuff, but it could have been a very straightforward discussion, being like, do you know what? We want to go there. We want to go there. Let's just call it a day.
Fair enough, right? Thanks, Leon. I'm going to bring you in next, Jeff.
Okay, yeah. I just think, is it once I made the decision to buy out the Black Knights group, it's happened very quickly. I don't know the answers to this. I'm just putting it out there. Is that a sign that perhaps there is something else in the pipeline? Because it's a lot easier to do stuff with the Black Knights gone. I know they're saying there's nothing in the pipeline, but I'm quite sure there'll be a few sniffing around.
My understanding is that this it has not been an overnight thing. This has been
right. Okay,
been discussed for weeks, if not months.
Right. Okay. But the fact that Black Knights have gone does make it easier to either get another investor in who's happy with a minority share and happy with David Gray and Malcolm Mackay and all the stuff that goes on and doesn't want us to be a feeder club. And it also makes it easier to sell in the long term because you've not got the Bill Foley elephant in the room. I make us. The other question I've got is what influence did the Black Knights group have on this season's transfers, which has been really successful? Did they have any input, or was it just down to Malky, the team, Garvin Stewart? Does anybody know?
Well, I know they along with HSL and Leslie Robb and the Gordons all put money in to make sure there was enough, to get a record signing in. So I mean, I believe there would have been. I can't believe there would have been no input whatsoever. I think the way that
if it's just a matter of putting a bit of money in to help out, that's okay. But I'm talking about the strategy. The players we've signed seem to be a different level to what we've been doing. Now, is that down to our football department with a bit of help from them with the money? I don't know.
So it will be our football. But so there's my understanding, right? And somebody quite happy for somebody to come and correct me. Effectively, what happened is they worked together to sort of set up the structure, the football structure at the club. Hibs have got a recruitment team. We've got our in-house analysts and all the rest of it, and the transfer committee, which is, I think, ultimately the responsibility of Malky Mackay. But I don't think we've been in a position where we've got a signing like that's Malky Mackay's signing, or that's the Black Knights signing, or that's David Gray's signing. I think they work together to make the signings. I think there's a sort of relatively consistent process that they go through to get it. So I think once they'd agreed how they go about identifying and signing players, they just leave the club to it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that kind of answers it. A lot of things like money-wise, in the short term, is that going to affect any of our plans? January signings. I've just read in the Observer or somewhere that it's not going to affect the development of the indoor pitch and the new thing. That's apparently still going ahead, which is good.
Yeah.
We really need that at HTC. And the other, you touched on it in one of the chats, is what we don't know is if we had got the Spanish coach and the director that Foley wanted, we would have had a better season last season. That's the unknown. They will never know that. And yeah, it's a bit of me that I'm obviously disappointed it's not worked out, because I was like everyone excited about I could only see benefits from it, but it started to turn sour. And I made the bad marriage analogy in the group chat, but all I say is, if it's going sour, don't try and make it work. Have a kid, make it work out. People suffer. In this case, it's the fans. So yeah, I'm glad they've gone and split and give us a chance to fend for ourselves.
It's a great point you make about the David Gray versus who might have been. Like, you never know, isn't it? It's just because David Gray was good doesn't mean the Black Knights were wrong. You don't know. It's like comparing something with an unknown. What it does tell you is that Ian Gordon was able to make a good decision in getting David Gray, Malcolm Mackay in. So we know that worked. But was it as good as it could have been? We will never know. It might have been better than it would have been. Again, we'll never know.
The thing about it, whether it was a Spanish or David Gray, when players are making mistakes like we did at the start of last season and just absolute howlers, I presume the Spanish coach might have got a better keeper in. That's the only thing I would hold against the recruitment team.
In the changing room for folk at half time, just to get their spirits up and get the sangre out and stuff.
Yes.
Everybody's going to do the Spanish coach and they're buzzwording the word Spanish like it's like every coach who comes to Spain is going to be a hit. It's like, you know what I mean? I was like, oh, this Spanish guy like that, so could be Bulgarian, mate. I didn't care. Do you know what I mean? But because folk are like, it's the whole thing about it. It's like as soon as you hear a wee bit of continental, a wee bit of foreign coming in, everybody's like, oh, exciting stuff. And
all right, reform. Calm down. Stephen, you're next up. You want to come in, Stephen?
I'm a little bit disappointed by it all, to be honest. There's definitely failures from both sides. I think Black Knights have maybe taken the percentage as almost an equal partner, when in fact it was a minority element that they had of the shares. So they probably tried to get a bigger shout at the table than what they were perhaps entitled to. And the Gordons, it seems like there's been an element of being unwilling to relinquish full control, despite the fact that there's now a shareholder. And I think the crucial identification for me is the phrase that they were partners. They might be partners, but they're certainly not equal partners. So there's always going to be a bit of a discrepancy there. Also as well, I believe Foley's made the comment that he wanted Hibs to be a feeder club. That, for me, is a complete lack of understanding of the history of Scottish football, British football. If you look at the history, we are a big club in a small, poor league, whereas Bournemouth are now a very small club in an insanely rich league. Albeit they've got a tradition and a history, but it's certainly nowhere near the top echelon of English football, whereas ours is predominantly at the top of Scottish, or certainly near the top of Scottish football. So that kind of comment irks a lot of fans, and it puts a lot of fans off the model that they're trying to instill. So yeah, once that was said, I think that probably would have turned a lot of fans. But the optics from the Black Knights and their communications over the last 18 months or so have been so poor. It's been not even thinly veiled criticism of the Gordons in the club. It's been very much, we know better than you must listen to us. And case in point, it's been raised already. The fact that whilst a lot of people didn't want Malcolm Mackay, it's probably an element of fans didn't want David Gray with his lack of experience as well. The two appointments have proved to be fairly successful. In our league, third place is effectively winning the league. You're the best of the rest, and we achieved that last season despite the start. So that was a big pie in the face to the Black Knights, who had basically said, if you listened to us, you would be doing better. There's an argument last season we could have done better. We could have got second. There's an argument this season we could for second as well. The season's still relatively early, so we can. But there is an element of me that thinks it's a bit of a missed opportunity in terms of the resource that Bill Foley has. And that probably brings me to the point I'm at now, where the Gordons are not going to continue putting in millions to write off the losses each year. The Gordons are millionaires. Bill Foley was a billionaire. So there's unless there's something lined up, like Jeff had mentioned, I would be slightly worried that we stagnate as a club in terms of investment and moving forward, and we don't stay on the coattails of your Celtic, your Rangers, and dare I say it, that lot across the other side of the city. They're getting investment, and they seem to be, obviously it's a different structure. They have the foundation help, so they're going to welcome anybody with a begging bowl that comes in. We're obviously a bit different with having actual owners in place. I just really, really worry that we stagnate and don't keep up with the other top teams in the league. Because even the guy up at Aberdeen, he's willing to put quite a bit of money into them. They bought the ground. They've paid off 3 or 4 different managers. They've brought in Tulane. I think Tullane's probably spent best part of 4 or 5 million, in honesty, across the last 2 or 3 windows. So I don't want us to be competing just to stay where we are. I want us to be competing to move up. And my worry is that it's maybe potentially an opportunity lost with this. So that's what I've kind of settled on, Matty.
Cool. I'll just play devil's advocate a wee bit. It's really interesting, the perception, right? So Bill Foley made that not listening comment after we got beat by Celtic Hearts. The next, however, many bits of communications that came out, which intended to be from Tim Bezpachenko, was all about how good the relationship was. There was loads of stuff about how they were working well together. But the one bit that I remember, everybody goes, oh, the one listening. That's it. So it's like, there were constant criticism and undermining the club. But actually, if you go back and look at the comms, the reality is a totally different story. But that one sticks out because it was a cut one. And the other thing was, it was the club that came out and said it was Gray and Malky that they didn't agree with. Foley never mentioned what it was about at all. He just said they're not listening. The club came out and effectively put the spotlight on Gray and Malky in that context. There was a bit of damage limitation there. I think they reckoned that the fans would side with them on it, which I think largely happened. But it's just interesting that perception there. Like you could say, it's like you shag one sheep, like that old story kind of about the boy that does everything and he's known for shagging the sheep. That's it. That's fully will be remembered for that one comment.
Yeah, Bezpachenko was having releasing statements though. Bezpachenko was having releasing statements.
He wasn't releasing statements, Liam. He was just doing interviews like running the mill, kind of like at the AGM when he was here and all the rest of it. It was just the normal. He's there, he's on the board. They were asking the questions about it.
It's easy to come out, like, whilst it's easy to criticise when things are going bad, and like Foley did, it's also easy to jump in and say everything's wonderful when it's going well.
Aye.
And that's kind of where you just, I suppose you have to just kind of wade through the bullshit and make a form of opinion.
That's it. It was just an observation. I don't have like any skin in the game. I just always thought it was interesting that it's everybody remembers it. They're not listening, but anyway, I'm just conscious of the time. Joe, I saw you put your hand up there, but John's been waiting first. So we're going to come to John, and then Joe will come to you next. John, on you go.
Firstly, breaking it just now with everything that Foley's saying is absolutely the right thing to be doing. But we have to remember the Gordons sought this. The Gordons spent a lot of time going through the SFA so that this could happen. We got 4 months of razzle dazzle. Know what I mean? About how brilliant this was going to be, what it was going to do. And the Gordons went into this with 67% shareholding, and HSL had 20%. Gordons now have 85%, can pass any special motion they want, can leverage any debt on the club that they want, and sell to anybody, can wipe out everybody else's shareholding. Know what I mean? But they're the people that brought in the Black Knights. And within 18 months, the relationship with the billionaire who's trying to create his own network of clubs falls down because they have a strategic parting of ways. Now, Ian has been generous in saying that there's a bit of inexperience at board level. Clearly, the quadrant wasn't quite in place when this was being done. We've had the luck that the chairman just happened to know somebody who could come in and run the football department.
Yeah.
I mean, we just happened to have somebody in the building that Leanne had given a long-term contract to that's worked out. But the truth is that the Gordons set this up, and they set it up badly. They have gone into partnership with somebody that they shouldn't have touched with a barge pole, because it should have been obvious 2 years ago what Bill Foley wanted. Now, I will give them the credit that they were just inexperienced and they weren't just setting it up to absolutely wipe out every other shareholder and have full control over every aspect of the club. I mean, but that's something that we can't forget. In order to get this through, we were razzle-dazzled. They wiped out HSL. They wiped out everybody else's shareholding in terms of it being meaningful. The guys at HSL are doing their damnedest to try and get it up and running again. I mean, and it's for them going forward to say, yeah, what are you going to do now that you've got an 85% shareholder? I mean, I would expect that everything that they've promised with regards to East Mains comes through. Yes, they have put money into the club, but I don't think that there's any way in which the Gordons have lost money at Hibs. Everything that they will have done will have put value into the ground, will put value into the club, and they will get stuff back. Shareholders put in £3 to £4 million a year. I mean, for the club. So I think that there's a bit of spin in it. The ending is right, but how we got there and the decisions that led us to there and the work that went into making it happen, another first for Hibs. I mean, we'll take that. But I think that the Gordons have to take a bit of sort of mea culpa in this, in the sense that it's another thing from that time that we got wrong. Everything's going good at the moment. We've got a CEO who doesn't come out and speak to everybody in hospitality, I mean, and shoot his mouth off. He's quietly doing the business in the background, we hope. We're not hearing anything majorly from the club. That's what happens at the shareholders' meetings. So there's lots that has got better over the past 18 months. But that's my concern in this, is that everybody focuses on the Black Knight being wrong and they have to go, but forget who invited them into the room.
There was a resolution, John. I don't know if you'll remember this, when at the AGM, when like you say, after the months of Dazzle to go and vote for it, there was a resolution passed on that night, which meant that if a party bought, and if they reached a certain level of shareholding, everybody else was obliged to sell their shares to them.
So
can you remember what the figure was?
Historically, it was 90%, and that's what standard business was. But they changed the Articles of Association to say that if more than 80% of the shares are sold, then everybody has to sell. So effectively, the Gordon, now you're hoping that we've got 20, 30 years, I mean, of somebody who's invested, I mean, the same way as Tom Farmer was. I mean, but we've seen businesses, I'm thinking of sort of Tom Hart and others, I mean, 70s and 80s, who didn't spend 20 or 30 years with the club. I mean, they came in, did their bit, tried their best, and actually moved it on to somebody else. I mean, so I'd like to think that we've got a Tom Farmer type situation here where the Gordons are going to build the club and be with it for a couple of decades, and that's how they get their value out. But if they, in 3 years' time, if it's not working out and they didn't like it and they want to sell up, then HSL will be having the meeting to decide what they do with the money that they're getting for their shares, because the person coming in is wiping it out. They've leveraged a deal similar to what happened at Man United, and we just have to live with that because actually we allowed them to take control.
Thanks, sorry, Joe. You did put your hand up, shouldn't all that? So I'll come to you, and then Stephen, you've got your hand up. I'll come to you after Joe. Leon, you had your hand up momentarily through it, so if you still want to come in, put your hand back up, and I'll remember to come back to you. But Joe, the floor's yours.
I've only got 2 words to say about the Black Knights and Will Foley. Well read. I disagree with most of what Ian had to say, having just agreed with everything he had to say about the St Mirren game. Sorry, Ian. But basically, we're well rid of them. You know, there's an old saying, if it looks like a duck and it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, usually it's a duck. And as soon as Hibs started to do their own thing at the start of the last season, appointing David Gray and Malky Mackay, who have both been a resounding success. Everybody watching this podcast must agree with that. They've both been a resounding success. It just shows how wrong they were. But he threw his toys out the pram. You know, I think we're well rid of Bill Foley and the Black Knights, because they were Black Knights. They weren't a white knight for Hibs, that's for sure. And Hibs have done great under the management that we've got just now. And I think we're well rid of it.
What do you see next for Hibs then, Joe? Where do we go from here?
It's very difficult to say, because none of us listening or commentating in this podcast know the real story about the finances. You know, that's the, you know, we were led to understand that the 6 million that came in, some of it was used to pay off some debt. I think some of it was used for ground development. You know, a little was used for some players. We don't really know the ins and outs of the finances. But, you know, Ian Gordon's a young man, really. You know, he could be with us for another 20 years. Let's hope so. And he could be the White Knight. Excuse a pun. But basically, that's what I think. I think we're well rid of them, though. And I'm glad that they've gone.
Does it put more pressure on the Gordon family to go and deliver something spectacular now, do you think, Joe? The fact that we've gone into a partnership that many people thought would take us to the next level, and in inverted commas, obviously that's not worked out now that the Gordon's taken the backboard control of the club. Does it put more pressure on them, do you think, Joe?
But I think we are getting to the next level. It doesn't just happen overnight, Matty. I mean, I've been supporting Hibs longer than anyone in this podcast. I'm the oldest of the long bangers, as you know. And in my lifetime, the last 18 months have been wonderful. And they've still got loads way to go with the squad that we've got now. So I think in 18 months, we've built a terrific squad. So come on, the Hibs.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Stephen, the floor's yours.
Yeah, it's just a very, very quick point. I'll certainly give other folk time to come in as well. Something I meant to mention earlier is this is now, if you think about it, the third alliance of some kind of partnership. Because if you go back a few years, remember there was that weird one with Brighton that led to absolutely nothing, and then there was that one with Champs and Battery as well. And other John made an absolutely brilliant point about the Gordons need to do some sort of lessons learned exercise in this, because the previous two haven't worked, and this one clearly hasn't worked despite, best part of 18 months or so. So it was really just to agree with John and to highlight that, it's not the first time something's been tried and failed by the Gordons.
Thanks, Stephen. Right, Leon, you're up next.
I just say again, just to follow on for there. I mean, this is the best period for me, being a Hibs fan, with regards to how the club is off the park, how the club is on the park. I've been hearing it all the time about Hibs shouldn't be doing this, Hibs shouldn't be losing to teams like this, Hibs shouldn't be doing that. And I look back and think to myself, when have we no lost to St Mirren away? When have we no lost to Livingston away? When have we no been beaten semi-finals for teams like St Johnstone? And folk, I get it's like back in the 60s and the 40s and the 50s and all that, but in my lifetime, it's where we are right now as a club is absolutely perfect. Now, there's obviously other stuff going on elsewhere in other leagues and that as well that people look at and think to themselves, oh, could we be doing this? Could we be doing that? I'm absolutely fine with the Gordons trying things that they think are going to improve the club. I would hate them to stick at it if it wasn't going to do it. If they were worried about losing face and worried about this, how it would look for the optics by staying on an agreement that wasn't going to benefit Hibs, that is the worst thing they could do. The fact that they've had the guts to be like, do you know what? It's not right for us. We're going to get you £6 million back out of our pockets. Then, because I'm presuming it's Ian Gordon buying the shares, no Hibs, who then obviously...
They're buying it, yeah.
Aye, so because obviously last time it was bought, but technically went into the club. Hey, so this time it's now Biden, they're buying it. So that's staying another £6 million in their pocket to the benefit of Hibs at the moment. Obviously not going into Hibs, but it's still like in their holding. Now, obviously, it's interesting about the situation about above the 80% thing, and now they can, right? Because that's obviously, if you want to, if you want to be a conspiracy theorist, you could go you could spin a web and a ball with that. But I think, I think, which I like. Like, listen, we're on the ground here. We're not running multi-million-pound businesses and that, and then making that kind of money. You never know. This could have been a big plan to get to a certain position. But I'm very happy where they are. It'd be very interesting to see where we go in the next 12 months. But I think and I hope Ian Gordon's will want to make a statement in January as well to show that the club's not affected by this situation. They'll know, like, what to go through January and us miss on targets or not people over the line. They'll be like, right, if we need to make something done, and get something done to make it look like we're in a good position, then do it.
You would have to think, Leon, that there's a plan B there. Like, they wouldn't just go and walk away for something where there's still a potential. Like, it's very rare that a relationship breaks down to the point where it's not, irreconcilable. So you would think that they probably looked at it and go, right, well, if we're not going to do this, we've got a plan B, and we're going to take it down that route instead. So I agree with you. I think the next 12 months will be.
There'll be other options. 100%. There's no way they've just, like you said, they might have made it work. They might have been like, you know what, we're needing a partner. We're just going to have to just make this work. But for me, I think there's definitely other stuff out there that for this to happen like this. Now, okay, it's a long-term thing, but to go the way it's when he's bought the actual shares back, it's nobody's sold on to anybody else. There's something coming, 100%.
Okay, thank you. Ian, yeah, you're up next.
I was very surprised. I mean, obviously we beat St Mirren, but I wouldn't regard our season as being great so far. So far we've won 6, lost 6, and drawn 7 games in the whole season. So I think we could do a lot better than that. I want to make it clear, I still think David Gray is a brilliant appointment, and it's very important that we allow David to grow and to learn. But we certainly this season could have been a lot better, and it's not been good enough so far. We shouldn't accept it as being good enough. I think we've got a brilliant squad, but I'll just remind you that of the game in 2007 that we beat Celtic 3-2, and Celtic had this background. Celtic had that.
They spelled the team's name wrong. Yep, Celtic.
Yeah.
Yep.
Celtic's feeder team, and of course they couldn't even spell Celtic. So they actually misspelled Celtic. I mean, who else would actually misspell Celtic? But of course, Dean Shields scored to make it 3-2, and it was great. But I don't want to be my whole supporting lifetime going back to well, obviously my favourite was Colin Steen. So when Colin Steen left and went to Rangers, I don't want to be a feeder club for Rangers and Celtic. I want us to be at least on a par with them. So I think we've got to be ambitious. We have to be ambitious. It's not good enough for a season so far, and I've certainly no wish to be Celtic's feeder team.
Okay, right, Chris, we're almost at time, so you're last up. On you go.
You know what, like kind of what one point just randomly there on what Ian was saying, I think attitudes have now changed that we won't be Celtic's feeder team. Players realise that moving to Celtic and Rangers isn't always a be all and end all. So I'll still go with that. But my point I was want to make was, see if Bill Foley was so concerned about the multi-club model and getting his way, the 49ers bought 51% shares in Rangers. And I know people say Ian Gordon doesn't want to sell, etc., but he's a businessman ultimately, and everybody has their price. So if Bill Foley was that concerned about Hibs and etc., he could easily have stumped up the cash. He could have put the cash in and goes, there you go. We'll dilute your shareholding. In the future, we might want to increase it, but you're going to get more money in the long run. I didn't so maybe as Leon said, I think there's maybe something in the background where Foley's not wanting to do it. Hibs have went, or Biden have went, take that money back. There you go. Probably a wee bit extra on, I would have imagined.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll probably find out, as you said, in the next year or so, 12 to 18 months, that there's probably something else in the background lurking.
Totally agree. If Foley had been that interested in Hibs, he would have come to see Hibs.
This is true. I never made it to Easter Road today. John, you got your hand up just in time before we wrapped up, so you can make your point before we go.
I think it's absolutely fabulous that I don't have to worry about under 23 players playing for Bournemouth that I've never heard of, that someone throws into a WhatsApp group and I'm going, are they any good? And I look stupid if I say anything about them. I think that'll be fabulous.
Excellent. I think we can all be grateful for that. Right, guys, thanks very much for your input tonight. Fascinating hearing the different views, and good to get opposing views as well, which I always like that with the phone, and it's a broad spectrum of opinions. John and Colin will be back on Sunday with we've got Ian Blackford on as a guest. Obviously, there's no game to talk about, so they'll be taking care of that one. I'll be on my way back from having watched Radiohead on Saturday night, so that's my weekend sorted. And then we'll have extra time on Monday, and I dare say we will spend a fair bit of time talking about this topic tonight. We'll give it the extra time treatment. So if you are a subscriber, you can look forward or dread that, whichever. Most folk like extra time, I think, but if it's not for you, sorry about that. Like, it is what it is. But that's what we'll be talking about. We might have some developments by then. Anyway, thanks for everyone who commented on YouTube. Sorry I didn't get to them all. It was a really busy night tonight. Obviously, a lot to talk about. There's loads of comments there. So if you're watching it, I'm sure you can go back and read them all yourselves. You don't need me to read it. It's no bedtime story, is it? It's like a fucking podcast. So do your own reading for a change. Right. All the best, and we'll see you next